That's the context that you're not gonna hear in legacy media, and I want you to know the truth. And that context is important to know as we go on with the rest of this story.
One quick thing here, guys. Every imperial fascist empire has an excuse and has different propaganda techniques and talking points. So the Germans would say, not a buffer zone, but they needed breathing space. So now the Israelis are like, let's just switch it up a little bit and call it a buffer zone. Now, who would own the buffer zone? Israel would. Who would live in the buffer zone? The Israelis would. So wait, didn't you just take that land? Yes, but we'll get American media to lie and pretend it was self-defense.
Not us though, we're not gonna lie.
I'm reporting to you from the town of Burj Callaway, where 2 days ago, the Israeli army targeted a medical center with an airstrike, killing 12 medical staff. In recent days, the Israeli army has killed 20 medical staff and first responders in a series of blatant war crimes aimed at terrorizing the population in the south and in Beirut and in the Bekaa. Americans, all of this is happening on your dime.
Yeah, I would like to know, considering that we've heard now multiple stories about how Israel targets and slaughters medical staff and humanitarian aid workers, since we're all supposed to be so scared of Iran and what a threat Iran poses, Cenk, how many medical staff has Iran slaughtered?
None.
Oh,
None.
Interesting. Who's the real terrorist here?
Yeah, so Israel has of course done this repeatedly in Gaza. They're now doing it in Lebanon. In fact, their leaders have promised that they're going to turn Lebanon into Gaza, and they destroyed every building in Gaza. So the fascist empire is now moving into Lebanon. And let me guess, American media, self-defense? Come on, what a joke they are.
In fact, I want to go to graphic 4 here. This is Major General Uzi Dayan in an interview on Israeli press. This is quoted verbatim. He says, quote, "We need to act fast and with full force, conquer the territory there, expel everyone who is there, destroy everything there, and turn it into a death zone, which means no one moves around there." He's talking about Lebanon. Who are the real terrorists? Who are the real terrorists? I think the Israelis are the real terrorists.
Oh, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
In fact, later in the story, I'm going to give you the kill ratios of Hezbollah versus Israel, and you will see that Israel is infinitely bigger terrorist than Hezbollah.
Now, the whole reason why Hezbollah exists is because Israel invaded Lebanon in the 1980s and attempted to steal land. That's what the Israelis do. They think that they're entitled to expanding their borders. In order to prevent that from happening again, Hezbollah forms as a militia to protect its borders. Something that we as red-blooded Americans would love if we were being invaded by our neighbor. But we're supposed to pretend like the good guys here happen to be Israel. Israel, not the good guys. They're looking to steal land and they want to disarm Hezbollah. In fact, they're demanding that the Lebanese government disarm Hezbollah. And since they're unable to do so, it would spark a civil war. Israel claims that they're doing this. Their only mission is to disarm Hezbollah and build a buffer zone, which is a euphemism for steal more land. That's the context that you're not gonna hear in legacy media, and I want you to know the truth. And that context is important to know as we go on with the rest of this story.
One quick thing here, guys. Every imperial fascist empire has an excuse and has different propaganda techniques and talking points. So the Germans would say, not a buffer zone, but they needed breathing space. So now the Israelis are like, let's just switch it up a little bit and call it a buffer zone. Now, who would own the buffer zone? Israel would. Who would live in the buffer zone? The Israelis would. So wait, didn't you just take that land? Yes, but we'll get American media to lie and pretend it was self-defense.
Not us though, we're not gonna lie.
Exactly.
And yeah, Hezbollah has attacked Israelis in response to Israel's aggression.
Do they have a right to defend themselves, or is that only for the Israelis?
They do, they have the right to defend themselves.
But American media says, our traditional media says, no, Muslims and Arabs have no right to defend themselves. If they try to defend themselves, they're terrorists. But when Israel kills way more of them and slaughters their children and their doctors and their schools, well, they're beloved Israel, so they're allowed to do that. No, they're not allowed to do that. They're terrorists.
Now, I want to give credit to the incredible journalist that we showed you at the top of this story. Her name is Courtney Bonneau, and she's on the ground doing incredible reports from Lebanon that are important to know about, right? It's important to know what's actually happening on the ground. So let's get into some of the details here, because so far, more than 1 million people in Lebanon, 1 million people have been displaced, forced out of their homes because of Israel. Okay, some are sleeping outside in tents, some are sleeping on the beach, just desperate people forced out of their homes so Israel can expand its borders under the false pretense of we need to deal with Hezbollah. Okay, of the 912 people who have been slaughtered already by the Israelis in the latest offensive, 67 of them happen to be women, 111 children. They really do specialize in the slaughter of children, don't they? And 38 medical workers have been killed by the Israelis. Lebanon's state-run news agency is reporting that at least some of those workers were killed in double tap strikes, another specialty of the IDF. In fact, just yesterday, 2 paramedics were killed and another was wounded in a double tap strike. Someone should write to Bill Maher and inform him about that, because when I told him about the double strikes that the IDF was carrying out in Gaza, he was shocked and chagrined. Now, an IDF spokesperson made clear that the occupation forces intend to do to Lebanon what they did to Gaza. And if you're paying attention to what's happening on the ground, they are making good on that promise. And that includes targeting hospitals while pretending they're being used by terrorists. I'll give you the latest example. Here's one post by an IDF spokesperson. Urgent warning, as part of its terrorist activities, Hezbollah is making extensive military use of ambulances. We warn that the military use of medical facilities and ambulances must be stopped immediately. This is their way of saying we are going to bomb paramedics, ambulances, and hospitals. We're gonna do that.
So why are they doing that, right?
Because they're terrorists.
So they did that in throughout Gaza, and so The Voice of Hind Rajab is a movie about what happened to 6-year-old Hind Rajab. And they have her actual voice in the movie, and it's a 6-year-old pleading. Israel has already murdered everyone else in the car, which were her relatives, and she's screaming, "Please, someone help me! Please, someone help me!" So they tell the Israelis, they ask for triple permission. The Israelis finally, hours later, grant permission for an ambulance to go rescue her, just so they could murder the people in the ambulance, and then they murder the 6-year-old. So and anyone who does a double tap is a definitive terrorist. There is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. A double tap is when doctors and emergency workers come to rescue the wounded, you murder the doctors and the medical workers. That is exactly what terrorists do, and it's IDF 101. And the IDF almost never fights a fair fight, right? They won't be like, hey, why don't you, for example, you wanted a war with Iran, why don't you use your ground troops in Iran? Oh, no, they could get killed. Their specialty is murdering women and children from the air, bombing them. And again, this is backed up by the numbers I'll get to at the end. So there's no question about it. Israel does these double taps. Israel's taking more territory. And guys, what's driving all of us crazy here is the gaslighting.
Yes.
Because if our media just reported this factually, and they were without any opinion, without my rants or anything like that, just hey, this is what's happening. Israel is taking more land. They've killed 111 children. They killed over 20,000 children. Instead, American media goes, no, you're the terrorists that are resisting Israel's expansion, and you know what? You're saying that they killed children, while true, is blood libel, makes you an anti-Semite, and you should never be allowed to speak in media again.
Then you guys are making blood libel seem like a good thing, because human beings are disgusted by the loss of innocent lives. And when your response to that is, how dare you speak out against it, you're doing a blood libel, you make blood libel seem like a good thing, right? Obviously it's not.
Charges of blood libel.
Charges, yeah, charges of blood libel, a good thing. Obviously it's not, because drawing attention to this is not blood libel. This is the truth.
Okay,
this is the truth. So the bad people are not the people drawing attention to Israel's terroristic activity. The bad people are the terrorists who are carrying out the slaughter of innocents.
Yeah, so last things here, guys.
Jesus, man. These people, like, but you're hurting their feelings. You're hurting their feelings.
111 Lebanese children are dead, so you'll excuse me if I don't give a damn about your feelings.
Same.
You know, stuff your feelings right up your ass, okay? If you're an Israeli supporter who are like, oh yeah, we slaughtered those children, but my feelings were slightly ruffled when you criticize the mass slaughter of children. Good, I'm super happy that you're offended. And I think your feelings should be crushed to pieces because you're a monster who doesn't mind murdering all these kids so that Israel can take more land. God, everybody should offend your feelings. Okay, so by the way, to give you a sense of what deep liars the American media is and how much they work for Israel, blood libel was a crazy trope against Jews back in like the 1800s, 1900s. We're talking about drinking the blood of children. That's crazy crap, okay? No one said that. Nobody's drinking the blood of children. We're talking about how they target women and children and civilians. That's a fact. It has nothing to do with that old trope. And they know it has nothing to do with that old trope, but they use it anyway, callously, to protect Israel and then pretend they're objective. Come on. All right, so finally, here's the numbers. This is an Israeli magazine, Plus 972. They reported back in August of 2025, data from an internal Israeli intelligence database indicates that at least 83% of Palestinians killed in Israel's onslaught on Gaza were civilians. So recent studies have suggested that the health ministry's death toll, which currently stands at around 62,000, that was back in August, now it's over 72,000, is also likely a significant undercount of the total number of casualties from Israel's onslaught, possibly by as many as several tens of thousands, which means that their civilian kill ratio is actually worse than 83%. So yes, but what was Hamas on October 7th? 67%. So what was Hezbollah? So Israel has done 70 October 7th, and they are bigger terrorists than Hamas. Their civilian kill ratio is worse. And finally on Hezbollah, well, since October 7th, they have actually killed 45 Israeli civilians, Hezbollah has, and they've killed 73 Israeli soldiers. So we did the math on that. That's a civilian kill ratio of 38%, which is way, way lower than Israel's 83%, leading you to believe and to conclude, if you're a rational person, that Israel is targeting civilians more than Hezbollah and Hamas are. So the whole point of calling people terrorists was supposed to be, are you targeting innocent civilians or not? Now they've changed the meaning to terrorist means dirty Arab we're allowed to murder, and including their entire family. And Israel is allowed to kill any civilian they like at gargantuan rates, worse than any terrorist group on planet Earth, and 70 times more, and take their land. But if you object, we're gonna call you an anti-Semite and try to destroy your life. But by the way, we're objective reporters. No, American media and American politicians totally and utterly work for Israel. That is why they hide these truths from you, because the American people found out what we're funding, the genocides and the wars we're funding, they wouldn't want to fund it. And that's why now more and more, because of online media, people are finding out. And that's why they're getting so mad at the American people and starting to call us anti-Semites in mass.
Yeah, they can call us whatever they want. If I were the leader of Lebanon, I would demand that my military join forces with Hezbollah to defend my country. That's what I would demand. But
and by the way, the leaders of Lebanon, you think like the leaders of UAE, you think if you make a deal with the Israelis, you're gonna be safe?
Oh, they're always gonna come for you.
Go ask the United Arab Emirates. So what happened to Dubai and all those places?
Bingo.
They thought, oh, if we make a deal with the Israelis, then they'll protect us. No, and the Israelis convinced the Americans to only defend Israel, and UAE got hit all over the place. And their pact with Israel only screwed them over. And these idiots in Lebanon, not the Hezbollah, but the leaders, are like, oh yeah, if we just help them kill our own people, then later they'll be nice to us. No, brother, after they take southern Lebanon, guess what they're gonna take next? Northern Lebanon. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.